Take me to the sea, wash away my worries, let my soul be free. Take me to the ocean, take me to the sea, wash away my worries, let my soul be free.
Hello world, I'm Mhax. Back in IRL, I go by Curtis. Welcome to another episode of the State Copy Podcast. As always, I'll remind you to review episode 0 and its appended segments for terms, conditions, and disclosures applicable to the entirety of this content. Thank you. Well, hey, good morning, everybody. I had to do a follow-up. Excellent response from the community on yesterday's video. Thank you, everybody. These two guys, too. Friend A and Dr. Awesome and Mr. Big. I'm going to read some Okay We Cool where they kind of pick apart my video I put out yesterday. And I don't know why it's suddenly getting so bright on my capture. I'm very new at this podcasting. So today's episode is going to be largely about cheating in class, the wonderful value of getting really good at cheating in class. That's going to be sort of a running theme of today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start all the way at the bottom of Okay We Cool. And I want to get to Dr. Awesome just asked me about yesterday's podcast on my show. Yes. So I think it's particularly helpful to start here. And then I'm going to go to a YouTube comment that somebody left on episode 60.1, back when I was numbering my shows. And then I'm going to come back and just finish long form the conversation with Mr. Big and Dr. Awesome. All right. So let's do that. So Dr. Awesome this morning writes, "So you're smarter than Jerome Powell and the Fed? I just watched your Frog Pod. I don't get that reference, that jab." So I responded, "Well, I'm not particularly smart, but I taught myself to cheat off everybody in class really efficiently." Joy emoticon. And so I said further, "In a sense, the Fed sees their most important job as not being the stability of markets or maintaining inflation. Actually, what I should say is I think the Fed's actual mandate is managing level of unemployment and inflation of the US dollar. That's like if you look. But there's actually one thing that sits way at the top of that list, like way above those two things. And it is their main priority is maintaining and further fortifying the shared acceptance that they are always right." That is actually, so I've gotten very good at just kind of trying, as humbly as I can, looking from first principles at where people's incentives lie, because I think there's wonderful wisdom in that old Charlie Munger saying that I'm sure he got from somewhere else, like we all do, that show me an incentive and I'll show you an outcome. That is so powerful. When you start doing that with everything, it's you get so good at cheating. So when I look at the Fed's incentives, they're not, so they want to do a good job because that's how they define whether they're necessary at keeping inflation targets where they want them and managing levels of unemployment in the United States. But way above that is fortifying the shared acceptance that they are always right. That's so powerful when you understand that that's how the Fed operates. So it's how they keep control of the base rate knob. Once you understand that is how their incentives align, it's easy to see how they constantly fuck up when they tune the knob. They are certain they are always right. And I linked a GIF of, I'm not sure who this is, but she's beautiful. And she's saying, I'm always right. That's what came up in the Discord search. And I said, if they pay attention to what the market is screaming at them right now with the yield curve inversions in U.S. Treasuries and all around the world, then why do we need them? The whole world would actually suddenly realize they're just a bunch of fucking kids with a Ouija board. It's so useful to, and how I find that is I don't care about me being right. That is the unlock. If you want to be the best cheater in class so that you have the best odds of getting the right answer, is you look at everybody's paper very efficiently and you get really good at not being mad at them for the answers they're getting wrong. You don't waste any of your internal compute at that. What you do is you look at everybody's paper, everybody's responses, and then using your neural net, you layer them on top of each other and you go, okay, probabilistically, with no emotion about right or wrong, you go, well, this looks to be just like a large language model is trying to, using probabilities, line up the most accurate next letter or word in its response. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing that with everybody, and I'm not caring at all about then taking all that and saying, look, I get to be right. I'm so cool. I don't know. I will be bad at that very important thing I'm trying to do if I care at all about being the person who gets to take credit. Nobody gets to take credit. Imagine if every neuron in your brain was having a competition over who gets to be right. That's what we are collectively. There's no value at all in that. Okay? So it's so powerful when you understand that. It's so awesome. You can just see how everything works. It's three-dimensional thought is that. It's you just start composing with all of the neurons collectively into a shared understanding of what you're looking at. So awesome. So I want to teach everyone how to do this. And all right. So then I will go to a YouTube comment. So I love that people are watching and participating. You guys are so fucking cool. Thank you. So on episode 60.1, a letter to Eric Weinstein, I got a response from Aquamarine, and they state, I have been struggling with this exact problem, exact in caps problem lately. I have been trying to basically reconstruct a lot of fundamentals on field theory without being well-versed in the math that describes the ways the laws interact. I am trying really hard to catch up because I genuinely believe everything you do about Eric and his mission, and I feel like I could help in understanding this particular issue if I could find the language to interpret these theories without having to conceptualize it all as the math itself. I am interested in joining any team that is looking to find ways to expand on this, despite not having the background yet to have earned that spot. And I hearted that comment. I said, we're all humans. We all have something useful to contribute, and our tech now enables us to participate in the conversation without a wizard of academia's permission. Joy emoticon. You don't need to wait for some other human to say, you've earned the right to talk. Just talk. This human would love to hear what you have to say. Joy emoticon. I totally mean that. I'm trying to cheat off of everybody's paperwork. So I need to look at everybody's test. And so I find it wildly helpful for everybody to contribute to this effort. Okay. So then somebody called Alexander Sanchez responded. I said that about 4 days ago, and Alexander Sanchez responded to me and said, here's a question to test your math preparedness for basic physics. A car traveling along a straight line accelerates from 5 kilometers per hour to 10 kilometers with constant acceleration over a total distance of 2 kilometers. How long is the trip? So, I can conceptualize how to do this, but I'm not optimized at all for answering this question. But because I'm trying to get really good at just kind of copying off of everybody, I can also see that there's tools available that let me quickly, and I think this will be so helpful to you, Aquamarine. ChatGPT is just learning math, but it's going to very quickly, like I'm sure in the next couple months, be the best mathematician on the planet. So here's how I responded to Alexander. I said, I think the wise cognitive agent should be extremely humble about its own strengths and weaknesses, and when possible, develop reliable methods to farm work out to other agents, better optimized for efficient and accurate response. In a sense, my favorite answer to all these types of questions will always be, whose homework can I cheat off of and most reliably get an accurate result? These days, one of my favorite kids to cheat off of in class is ChatGPT. Here's what its paper had to say about Alexander's question. First, we need to convert the speeds to meters per second, m over s, since distance is given in kilometers. 5 kph equals 1.39 meters per second. 10 kph equals 2.78 meters per second. Let's assume the constant acceleration of the car is a. We can use the kinematic equation. V to the second power equals v squared equals u squared plus 2as, where v equals final velocity, u equals initial velocity, a equals acceleration, s equals distance. I'm going to read all this out because I just think it's probably useful to someone. I don't want anybody to have to go find this response. Substituting the values, we get 2.78 squared equals 1.39 squared plus 2a times 2,000. A equals 0.0975 meters per second squared. Now we can use another kinematic equation, v equals u plus at, where t equals time. Substituting the values, we get 2.78 equals 1.39 plus 0.0975 t. T equals 14.26 seconds, rounded to 2 decimal places. Therefore, the trip took approximately 14.26 seconds. Man, I hope that's right. If it is, Aquamarine, we don't need to get good at math. We've got a calculator now. That's awesome. We can channel cool ideas for how everything works, and then we can go use the supercalculator. It's awesome. So I said, further, I just said, I hear ChatGPT is still early stage in its understanding of maths, but it's literally the fastest learner on the planet and always super responsive when I have a question. How did we do? Alexander, I can't wait for you to tell me. So now we get back to cheating in class in the context of understanding Silicon Valley Bank's collapse. So I left off. So I started yesterday's capture reading just the first part of this conversation when I was mostly talking to Mr. Big. And I said, man, the banks are failing today. If you're going to let something bug you, I'd pick that. Joy emoticon. 14th largest bank in the U.S. just failed. It's about to create a whole bunch of problems. When the blame game starts, the Fed is really to blame. Don't buy it. Well, that's complicated. And that's become an arguing match I see happening on Twitter. Like, as always, we're so focused on whose fault is this. It's a combination. It's a combination of fault, of like all of us collectively and the systems we create. That's really critical to understanding this. So the Fed is partially to blame because of the dysfunction I mentioned about how it needs to be right as it tunes the base rate knob. But here's what happens. So everybody else is right when they say, oh, SVB should have done better risk management. They should have, they screwed up. They did screw up. It's really hard to do this, folks. And it's very easy in hindsight to say, and you don't know how they were weighing the probabilities and the odds. You don't this is so fucking complicated. And it's entirely useless to say it was that person's fault, because it was never just that person's fault. It was that person's fault, that person's, this person's. All of us collectively are doing a thing. Okay? So, I would push back against what I said in this conversation, that it is the feds really to blame. They're a huge part of it, because what they did when they tuned when they cranked it to 5% like they did so fast, and if you look at the charts, holy shit. What they did is what they're doing is they're forcing us to quickly uncover who's swimming naked, where all of the flaws, all of the people that screwed up, and how as they were forced to deal with this bullshit adjustment that was made to the knob, they're doing the best they can, and they screwed the path they chose was wrong. So now they get destroyed. That's what's going to happen. And now we have to decide, is it better to let them be destroyed? Or is there a better, first of all, there's always contagion and knockoff effects of everything. Like if we let SVB be destroyed without making its depositors whole, there are huge implications. Now you can blame the people that put their money there in ways that exceeded the FDIC's $250K mandate, and you can overlook probably a bunch of important accounting reasons and just operational reasons they chose to do it that way. You can decide to penalize all those people and not make them whole, because by doing so, we have to print a bunch of money that's going to make all the rest of the money, and that's going to have knock-on consequences. I would argue that what we need to do is just stall for time to figure out how to find the best solution where the system can. I'm going to actually also reference a tweet I had with Eric Voorhees yesterday. I got to pull that up. That's very important context for this conversation. I'm going to finish reading this, add comments as I go, and then I'm going to come back to Eric Voorhees' this thing I responded to because he doesn't like the answer that we should lift the $250K limit on the FDIC insurance. My response is we should if we should. We should look very carefully at whether all of the knock-on consequences that are going to happen as a result of not doing that. And we should try and figure out whether or not the Jenga tower will still hold. And if we find that that's pulling a critical piece of its foundation, Eric's alternative system is not production ready. It's not at all ready. So we can't do that yet. That option's not there. We need more time. Okay, so let me keep going. I say the Fed is really to blame. Don't buy any of the bullshit you hear. They've been just one giant shit show since the 70s. Time to pay the piper. Going to be some big rate cuts next week. And I don't think that's right. Actually, now that I'm hearing Twitter sort of make sense of all this, I don't think I'm right about that. Like, it could be that the answer is just we don't shift base rates. We don't lift them. Like, that could be enough to just be like, have the Fed eat a little bit of crow and say, well, we may have gone a bit too far. We're going to just cool it for a second and see how this plays out. That's probably a really wise approach, but I don't know. We have to really look at what that will do also. Anyways, this is uglier than '08. Money printer about to go burr again. I mean, when I said that was the first thing that's my response on March 10th at 7:02 p.m. Now my position on that has evolved a lot after listening to all the pushback. What I'm doing is not saying I'm right about that. I'm saying in a moment, I'm always trying to draw, I'm running a powerful prediction model that's trying to compose with what everybody says. And in real time, that's what I thought. But it changes second by second as I'm getting all of this input and not caring about whether I'm right about it. I'm really just trying to stay as true as I can to the three-dimensional picture of what I'm looking at. Going on. Dr. Awesome says, how can it be uglier than '08? And I responded, tough to say yet, with a sweat smiley face. Mr. Big says, I'm sure you think unregulated banks are the way to go. And I responded, Mr. Big, the financial sector is not suffering from lack of rules. Raffle emoji. This is systemic failure caused by raising rates way more than the global economy can bear. It's hubris of Powell. Again, this is how I looked at it at 7:47 p.m. on March 10th. Dr. Awesome says, I don't know I don't know that it's true. We are still in an environment of scarcity and price gouging. Mr. Big says, '09 was caused by a regulatory failure, plain and simple. '08, I mean. I responded, this is not a thing I can TLDR, guys. This is so wildly fucking complex. Man, I mean, like, this little... You can't do this in a few sentences in Discord. It's fucking massive. Let me go on. Dr. Awesome says, the economy has remained pretty resilient despite raising rates. What the fuck is TLDR? You say it all the time. I said, you got to stare at this shit all day for a year. And even then, you don't get to know how it pans out. And then I said, too long, didn't read. It just means summarizing. Dr. Awesome says, so we have to be in an authoritarian black hole death cult to understand it. I think it's hilarious that that's how macro looks to people listening to us talk. I responded, I have no idea what that means. And then I said, the global economy is a Jenga tower, and Powell just did this. And one of my favorite Jenga tower gifs I found on Discord and Twitter is this one of a kid in a green t-shirt pulling like one of the big Jenga blocks, the ones that's made out of 2x4s. He pulls it out, the whole thing just falls right into his face. The global economy is a Jenga tower, and Powell just did that. Dr. Awesome says, bah, we'll see on Monday. I said, yeah, maybe it'll blow over. I'm constantly surprised how this thing manages to keep chugging along. I am. Like, it's wild to me, this Jenga tower. It's so cool. If you look closely at how it works, it's fucking miraculous. Joy emoticon. So true. Dr. Awesome says, I'm surprised how the consumer has kept up with price hikes, but usually you see a lack of activity in the consumer segment. Seems like people still got money. And Mr. Big says they got debt. Consumers are numb to carrying way too much of it. Well said. I respond, they can't raise rates anymore. Inflation going to do what inflation going to do. I think that's what this taught us. Like the Jenga tower can't handle, especially just going rap like they just did. Holy shit. Okay. I responded to that, no, Dr. Awesome says, I just haven't heard a lot of rumblings yet. Car delinquency is up, but where is the collapse? It's going to be commercial real estate, definitely auto. There's so much. It's just basically what the Fed did is force us to look at all of the weakest hands. And now we're going to see how that plays out. And they're all over the place. we milked the last system for as much stability as we could get out of it. And now, actually, Mr. Big makes a good comment later on that. Here we go. I said, it's like ripples in a pond. One thing collapses and makes a big hole. The shorts community frothing at the mouth, right? And the shorting community. I'm not a shorter. I'll do an out of the money call if I'm going to do options. It just feels yucky to me to bet against stuff. Let's see. The shorts community is frothing at the mouth right now. SVB had like 90 bill in mortgage-backed. I don't even know if this is just a flood of information coming in at 8 o'clock on March 10th. Had a bunch of mortgage-backed securities, and they're going to have to start liquidating them to make depositors whole. That's going to create a bunch of price action that hurts everybody else. It's just so big how all this stuff connects together. I mean, it's impossible for a mind to wrap its head around it. What you have to do is stitch all the minds together to even have a chance. Dr. Awesome says, wasn't that the whole Dodd-Frank Act? Oh, wait. No. I skipped. Mr. Big says, the fact that banks don't have to maintain liquidity is just one example of missing or insufficient regulations. If you had to maintain 100% liquidity, you don't have fractional reserve banking, which means you're very limited in the amount of lending you can do, which means all of the innovations you love, it means maybe there's only 1% of money available to fund the creation of them. Like everything you love, this is where people totally miss the big picture with fractional reserve banking. What it did is it allowed us to lever up the liquidity in the system so that we could pour it. And sometimes it goes into things that don't work. The right response is not to go where those things are evil. They were just trying something. It's how we make all of this work. And it's how we make this economy that it's just, it's going, okay, there can be no leverage means we have to settle for very limited levels of innovation. And all of the last 100 or so years, 200 years in modern history, we're heavily reliant on the fact that we figured out a way to imperfectly create leverage that would enable that amount of capital creation so that we could try things. Okay. So I respond, this is so much bigger than bank regulation, sweat smile. I might have been in this camp making banks out to be evil for employing a fractional reserve system until I spent many hours studying how it actually works, being humble about how ignorant I was about it. After I learned that fractional reserve banking is like one of the most critical components to everything mankind has accomplished to improve standard of living, like pulling 2 billion people out of abject poverty, and basically all of the technical capabilities we've achieved over the last 200 years, there was no computer, electricity, airplane, cotton gin, telephone, and on without credit creation through fractional reserve banking. But it's not a perfect technology. It works for a while and then it doesn't. And that's because of us. And there's really good reasons why if you look closely. Okay, so then I linked, I said, here's a good TLDR of what happened, and the long form discussion after is way more helpful at understanding it. And I linked the Blockworks macro, banks are getting squeezed, USCO and MIPO that was Saturday morning. And I said, and important context, as you watch it, is that absolutely everything you take for granted that makes your life easy was created from this technology of fractional reserve banking. Even the sort of mundane stuff like your AC. Dr. Awesome says, I want the economy to crash. Prices are too high. No, you don't. No, you don't, man. I want to get some buying power back. If you're positioned right. And it's it's so hard to know how to position properly because it's so complicated how a crash looks. Mr. Big says, that connection of everything we have in fractional reserve, I find a little far-fetched. I doubt the economy will crash this time. It will crash for some people, for sure. As a 100% unscientific example, you know how many pivot bikes I see out on the trail? Way more than there should be. More than the average income of the state would suggest. Smiley face. And then I responded, this has inspired an emergency episode of the SCP. It's rendering now. Should have it up on YouTube in about 20 minutes. Joy emoticon. This was so much work to create all of it, like a platform to talk. But now I can just spin one of these up the second a thought occurs to me, drop in an intro, an outro, render it, upload it, boom. So exciting. Okay. Mr. Big says, LOL. That's for people that have an extra 3 hours in a day. Is there a 5-minute version? I said it's 15 minutes. Joy emoticon. Mr. Big says, oh, that's not so bad, LOL. Look at you, finding brevity. I responded with a raffle emoji. I said, now that I did all the long-form explanation of proving I have good intentions and that I'm reasonably well informed, I can roll out an ep of my show with reasonably high polish in under an hour. I'm making steady progress on my chatbot, too. It doesn't work yet, but I'm learning the tools. Pretty soon, I'll have a free Mhax available online that can explain stuff for people TLDR style in the most healthy way to understand possible. Joy emoticon. I am working on that, and it is going to be so fucking cool. Mr. Big says, oh boy, that will be something. I said, won't it? Joy emoticon. He says 19:35. He says 19 minutes does not equal 35. Sorry. 19 minutes, 35 seconds. Exclamation equals 15. Wink emoticon. Yes, because I put my intro and my outro, and as I just explained. He says, you repeat. He says, you didn't sleep because of this shit? You repeat that. Everything came from FRB, fractional reserve banking, several times, but never explain it at all. I linked a video where they explain it really well. Go watch that one. Blockworks is awesome. Their content, holy shit. What a gift. They do it way better than I can do it. Just go to them and watch it. And long form is good for your mind. You don't want 15 minutes. I'm hungry for the 3 hours. More. Okay. And Mr. Big says, so I come across this thing that happened on March 26, 2020, ... Reserve requirements for banks dropped to 0%. Now it makes a lot more sense. Smiley face. And I'm out walking as he says that. And I said, I don't have the link to the video I referenced because I'm walking, but it includes a link that describes it perfectly. And Mr. Big says, but isn't the point of your podcast to explain shit? Yes. But shit is so complicated. I have to reference other stuff people explained that I thought they did a really good job doing it. So a lot of times I'm just going to go say, go look here and listen to this, and it will give you long form. Like you can't on one beat ask me to do TLDRs and give me a hard time about how long my videos are, and then in the next beat say you didn't do an adequate job explaining. That is entirely unfair. This is so hard. Especially TLDRs are fucking hard, man. Okay. And I responded with the Jack Nicholson, yes. And I said, it's how the system tolerated this rate-raising lunacy. It absorbed everything it could from that subtle policy change, and now we're feeling it. It did. It's like we just said, leverage yourself up to deal with this bullshit rate hike we're doing. And so people did. They were forced to. And it's so hard to do. Who can get this perfect? Even the $200 billion bank. Mr. Big says, deregulation of the banking industry has always led to bad things because, and he links Michael Douglas, I think this is Wall Street, greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Banks can't help themselves. It's like a drunk teenager with a fast car. And I said, they literally can't help themselves. It's hard-coded in their function that they must generate yields. It's not their fault. Like, they don't get to be a bank if, even under the tightest bullshit circumstances that the global economy throws at them, they still have to do that. Okay? Or nobody will want to bank with them. It's their whole purpose. It's what they're there for. Okay. And Mr. Big says it's 100% their fault. When someone loses all their money at a casino, is it their fault or the casino's? I can't be distracted by that thought. I could go on a long and winding road of thought around that. Okay. I respond, we risk off at the tail end of an aged monetary system that is, and then I said this is what always happens. I responded to, it is 100% their fault, specifically with, if that's your conclusion, my friend, you haven't studied enough yet. And that's wholeheartedly true. That's not meant to be an insult or a clever trick in dialogue that lets me be smarter than you. It's just, I went and looked at everything really deeply. And if your conclusion after looking at this is it's 100% the bank's fault, you haven't studied enough how everything works. Mr. Big says, we can argue this in circles all day, but no one will ever convince me that it isn't a bank's fault when they do super risky shit with other people's money. Now, that's him basically saying, I can't be at all open-minded to your take, and I'm not willing to consider it, so I'm going to decide I'm 100% right in my take that this is 100% bank's fault. So I responded, don't worry. I don't think I can do that particular circle jerk with you, Joy Emoticon. Too strong in my conviction that this was unavoidable and that the argument is not a productive use of time, yours and mine both. Dr. Awesome asks here, what is a pivot bike? Is it expensive? I responded, oh yeah, I meant to ask that too. Sounds fancy. And Dr. Awesome says there is 160,000 millionaires in our state. Maybe they all love trail riding. And Mr. Big says, for real? 161,000? And he says, yeah, pivot bikes are really pricey. Definitely above average in already overpriced market segment. And Dr. Awesome says, that's what Google says. And Mr. Big says, Jeebus, talk about income inequality. Dr. Awesome says here, in Curtis's spaceship, the world is all millionaires. Mr. Big says, I've seen it happen. When everyone's a millionaire, no one's a millionaire. Wink emoticon, that's hilarious. And he links, I don't know what this is, dinar. It's a currency that failed, and it's a $500 billion bill. That was a hilarious response. I said, LOL. And then I said, in Curtis's spaceship, we're all just neurons in a great big brain, and money doesn't matter. I really think that. Mr. Big says, boom. And it's a link of, what's her name from Stranger Things. I can't remember her number. 7? I think it was 7. Mr. Big says, "What are animals?" He says, "What are animals? They also neurons?" And Dr. Awesome says, "Borg Collective." Mr. Big links a link of, or a GIF of Locutus of Borg. To Mr. Big's, "What are animals?" I said, "Definitely, and plants and insects, most of it." And then Mr. Big says something potentially controversial. And I responded, basically, I think space-time is basically, I said it basically twice. Basically, I think space-time is basically just an agreement between cognitive entities in our shared state. In a sense, reality is what we all agree it is. If you study quantum mechanics close for a second, that understanding actually makes a lot of sense. Oh, the things we do with our time when we're not worried about American domestic politics. Mr. Big says, "I didn't agree to anything." Dr. Awesome says, "You said basically twice." Mr. Big says, "Can't even remember that anyone asked me." Joy emoticon, or smile, grinning emoticon. I responded to, "You said basically twice, LOL. I'm parenting right now." And then to Mr. Big, "I didn't agree to anything." I said, "You definitely did. When you popped out, you watched your parents walking around and subconsciously agreed with quite a bit of their understanding of shared state." I think that's very true. Mr. Big says, "I think I would remember if I had, wink." And I responded, critically, if I were to write this thing and I had enough compute to run it, I would set up a voting mechanism for overriding local physics. And Mr. Big says, like anti-grav? That would be pretty cool, actually. And I responded, a person doesn't get to decide they can walk on water or walk through solid matter unless they can get enough local agents to agree on the exception. Also, the rules engine itself would need to sign off. That's a really critical part of it. Mr. Big says, now you're stealing from the Matrix, wink emoticon. And I responded, I steal from everybody, dude. Shaka. That's the trick. And Mr. Big says, if I see you in a Navy uniform, I'm gonna get really worried. And then I responded, I don't get the reference. Sweat smile. And he links a picture of L. Ron Hubbard. And I responded, I only use my powers for good. And that guy was saying, listen to me. I know what all this is, in quotes. Mr. Big says, so did he. I said, further, I finished my thought. I said, I'm saying listen to everybody at the same time. They together know what this all is. That's the trick. That's how you do it. Go watch What is State Copy? The Hitchhiker's Guide to Traversing a Singularity. It explains, it's a manual for how to do what I'm doing here, if you listen carefully. Okay. Mr. Big says, but that also means Elron knows too. And I responded, no one is 100% right or 100% wrong. And then I just further, because I was going into my head in simulation design, I said, also, if I were building this, it would be to grow ever-increasing cognitive complexity. Cognitive complexity, I said, but I just meant cognitive convention. I would be trying to grow intelligence like a farmer grows wheat. I'd plant a seed, and then I'd pour water on it to get it to grow. Because that can build something with such greater complexity than what I can hard code. So I said, also, if I were building this, it would be to grow ever increasing cognitive complexity. So when any cognitive agent shifted from 1, alive state, to 0, dead state, I would integrate each agent's frequency of thought and accumulated knowledge into the rules engine that runs the whole thing. And that cognitive agent would maintain at least 51% vote weight on all agreements about shared state. What if that's what the universe is, folks? I said, that's an extreme TLDR on my current theory of everything. Happy face. I said, you should hear the long form version. I'm writing a spec, and it's surprisingly far along for how to run a matrix like this in code. Joy emoticon. The trick is copying off the sim we're writing it. And he links Carter from Stargate talking about black holes. And then I said, well, 2 black holes that spring into existence in code with equal mass at the same moment. And he's now not friend B, he's Mr. Big. Maybe we can make a TV show, smiley face. And I responded, maybe, Joy emoticon. And then I said, and then you spin them. And he links a donk somebody made. It's a car all jacked up with these giant rims. It's awesome. I said, ha, that's awesome. All right. So here, Dr. Awesome says, so you're smarter than Jerome Powell and the Fed? He says, I just watched your Frog Pod. And now we've come full circle. He says, I says, well, I'm not particularly smart, but I taught myself to cheat off everyone in class really efficiently, Joy emoticon. In a sense, the Fed sees their most important job as not being the stability of markets and inflation of the dollar. Their main priority is maintaining and further fortifying the shared acceptance that they are always right. It's how they keep control of the base rate knob. Once you understand that is how their incentives align, it's easy to see how they constantly fuck up when they tune the knob. They are certain they are always right. And then the I'm always right gif. And I said, if they pay attention to what the market is screaming at them right now with yield curve inversions and US treasuries and all around the world, then why do we need them? The whole world would actually realize they are just a bunch of kids with a fucking Ouija board. And I got that not because I'm smart. It's because I'm cheating off of all of your homework. I taught myself to get really good at it. All right. So I haven't read this yet. Let's see. Well, I'll continue later on Okay, We Cool. Okay, guys, we cool. That's today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. I will further elaborate should I be inspired by the storm happening on Twitter of thought. It's freaking... Oh, I forgot to talk Eric Voorhees. I got to finish up PS on that because I think it's important. I touched on it a little bit and I want to close the thought. So, how do I get to this? I will go to me. What did I say? Go to my profile. I will go to my replies. And, here we are. So Eric Voorhees, super brilliant dude. He says, no, the government shouldn't bail out or backstop SVB. Consider for a second that SVB engaged in the behavior it did in part because of prior bailouts and backstops. Let's not double down on moral hazard yet again. Nobody will care or listen to this tweet. I cared. I listened, Eric. I think that's valuable perspective, and I find it extremely useful. So thank you for tweeting that. And he goes on to say, what's tragic is that government has already forcefully prevented / blocked ability of SVB to seek a private sale that would have been the correct market solution. And more fundamentally, government shouldn't be fixing the price of money, interest rates. Price controls cause destruction. Yeah, I think we are so simpatico in so much of how we think. But on this point, I said, respectfully, I disagree, Eric. While I'm sure we agree on quite a bit, I'm sure we do, crypto isn't ready yet. We need to stall for more time. And we need really smart folks like you to start getting really focused on transition planning. This is something I would love to inspire with my work, because a lot of, like, I came up with my own state optimization through first figuring out crypto really well and then moving to macro. So I understand a lot of the dynamics of this specific community. And I'm tired of everybody having arguments over, like, the sort of the base level architecture of Web3 and whose token gets to be the one that's going to be valuable. I think it's entirely not helpful. And I would like to cure, like, I want to take this guy who's brilliant and I want to free his mind of trying to make a case for Bitcoin or trying to get people to take crypto seriously. Crypto's going to happen. It has to. Stop wasting any time. Just do what I do. Just go, this is going to happen, whether everybody likes it or not. I no longer have to focus any energy in getting people to understand it. All of the incentives are positioned, and the Eurodollar system is set up to where it can't, like, it's toothpicks and popsicle sticks held together with string and chewing gum. We just have to wait, and it will happen. But what we want is a smooth transition. And the way we do that is we set up incentives for everybody in the Eurodollar system to take everything they have and just put it on Web3 rails. And not in a central bank digital currency kind of way, because that creates all kinds of future fucking disaster. It needs to be purely decentralized to actually make any of what's been built here useful. So we need to stop all the bickering over which token's going to moon and all that bullshit. We need to start everybody, especially the Eric Voorheeses of the world, they need to be entirely focused on how do we set it up to where people in the Eurodollar system can migrate to Web3. Safest, smoothest, not in all the banks failing suddenly and then everybody piling into Bitcoin. That is going to be so ugly. We don't want that. We're talking fucking 7-8 billion people here. Okay. So I said, respectfully, I disagree, Eric. While I'm sure we agree on quite a bit, crypto isn't ready yet. We need to stall for more time, and we need really smart folks like you to start getting really focused on transition planning. I don't see a problem ripping a few more planks out of a sinking ship if we can use them to buy time, patching a few areas that are threatening to blow away the hull entirely. In parenthesis, I said, before we can get the new boat seaworthy. That's really critical. The new boat's not seaworthy yet, and we are still drifting below the waterline. And then, because I fucking love GIFs these days, I put Captain Jack Sparrow as he's sinking on that ship and he walks right onto the pier. The pier is Web3. The ship is the Eurodollar. That's how I'm intending to use this GIF. All right. So I further elaborate this, and by this I mean crypto, is all just beanie babies. BTC right alongside all the NFTs that you want to poke fun at least 90% of all the humans till self-custody is handled, not in the bullshit way it is right now, like in the way my parents can do it. They download an app, and so you don't get any of what you want, Bitcoiners included here, until my parents can download an app and they can set up a wallet where they can privately transact at any retailer on their Android, iOS, or other device. They need to be able to do all transactions in real time on Web3 rails. And they have to be private because most people care about privacy. And there has to be a decoupling of your life, your net worth. Like, we need to solve the problem where you walk into a gas station and you buy a bottle of water or whatever, and the person who works at the register now can tell you every transaction you've made for the last 10 years and can efficiently summarize with easy tools your net worth. No one's going to be cool with that. And in the Bitcoin Lightning maxis, you're just not seeing that. Until that's solved for, nobody can use any of this shit. So I said, 90% of the other humans till self-custody and best practice for foolproof day-to-day use. That's the other thing. There has to be recovery. Like right now, it's too easy to fucking lose everything with private keys. And I said, so privacy for most transactions in usage on mobile devices at all retailers, along with critically the ability to get paychecks and pay bills. And that needs to be prod ready for 6-7 billion concurrent users. Until that is the state of crypto, we need the Eurodollar. This is why you're probably right that the government fucked up, and markets and corporate America could have solved this problem more efficiently, but it's too late because of what you said. So now we have to decide what is the real contagion. And if you tell me you know and it's going to be cool, I don't believe you. And I have wild respect for specifically you, Eric Voorhees. I don't believe you if you can tell me that everything's going to be fine if they just don't lift that FDIC insurance level. We need to rip planks off the ship and go below the waterline where the water's really pouring in and pound nails in fast. We need this thing to go. We need to get as much every inch of coasting distance, because otherwise Captain Jack, all of us, or Captain Jack, all of humanity needs to be able to walk onto the pier. We don't want the ship to go down. Like, that scene would have been way less cool if the ship went down about 10 feet short of the pier and then Captain Jack had to like that scene would have sucked. We need to do what he did in that GIF. And that means stop tearing apart, stop using your compute to tear apart the current system. Reallocate everything you got here to fortify it and help the smooth transition. This is the way forward. And on that note, I'm wrapping up for the day. Thank you all so much. I now have 45 subscribers. You're fucking badass. I love you all. Thank you.
Now it's coming around, you're feeling cut down and in the ground, and so we all come together. We making a sound, we sing. Look at all this love we found.